I don't suppose they told you anything in Denver about the tragedy we had up here during the winter of 1970? I hired a man named Charles Grady as the winter caretaker. And from what I've been told, I mean, he seemed like a completely normal individual. But at some point during the winter, he must have suffered some kind of a complete mental breakdown. He ran amok and killed his family.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias. Today we're discussing The Shining, 1980, directed by Stanley Kubrick, written by Stephen King. This 2-hour and 26-minute movie, written by Stephen King, screenplay by Stanley Kubrick and Diane Johnson. Most people know this notoriously as Jack Nicholson's, Shelley Duvall's, and Danny Lloyd's movie. However, this is also adapted very much by from Stephen King's novel, The Shining, and here is the synopsis. A family heads to an isolated hotel for winter where a sinister presence influences the father into violence, where his psychic son sees horrific forebodings from both past and future. So, Jack Nicholson plays Jack Torrance, Shelley Duvall's Wendy, Danny Lloyd is Danny, Scatman Crothers as Dick Halloran, and Philip Stone is Grady, and Joe Turkel is Lloyd. So, everyone knows that this is one of the most talked about horror films and referenced horror films of all time. The performances in this are transcendent. Jack Nicholson looks absolutely insane from the first frame. Stanley Kubrick, from the first frame, you realized has an absolute eye for film and cinematography and just beautiful landscapes, and you're in for a treat. The casting, like I said, the music is amazing. Let me see. The music does a lot of the lifting, honestly, in this, because I don't actually think this movie is that scary. It's more suspenseful. The composers are Wendy Carlos and Rachel Elkind, but it's phenomenal, to be honest. The atmosphere in this, like I said, it's more suspense than it is horror, so you don't see terribly too much blood, guts, and gore in this. But the atmosphere and the way that you don't know what's going to happen, that's what you're gearing for. The camera work, like I said, Stanley Kubrick, he's probably most notable for this movie because of the camera work and the location, the Overlook. The Overlook Hotel is very much a character within this movie. So there's, I think it's called Room 237 or 238. I kind of forgot which one it was, but there's a documentary on The Shining, and a lot of people kind of refer to it when talking about The Shining. Let me see. Is it Room 237? 238? 237, I believe. Yeah, and that is a documentary on, and it's there's different interpretations of Stanley Kubrick's the film The Shining. I have not seen that, so I'm not really going to talk about it. Most of this is just strict impressions and what I saw on the screen. I fucking love this movie. I think it's one of the best movies to demonstrate what you can do on in a bottle film. I know it was kind of a relatively big movie in comparison at the time for just that little of those little actors. It was $19 million, went on to gross $44 million. I think that was the opening weekend. But yeah, this movie goes on the shelf as one of the best. The camera work, like I said, can't say enough good things about it. So I'm not going to talk too much about like what I think the interpretation of the movie is. Really, I'm just going to talk about plots and whatnot. Certain things happen in this movie that cannot be explained without saying they're supernatural. So yeah, there's a supernatural element to this. I honestly think that what Bald Move said couple years back on their review is that the music does most of the lifting for it, and I kind of agree. They spoke about the interpretation of The Shining is completely changed if you change the music, because originally they had the 1980s synth track in the back, which would have really dated this movie. I think that the use of classical music is what brings it and enables it to be played at any time and not just send you back to a certain time. Because when you're watching it, it doesn't feel like you're sent back to like a certain specific time. It just feels like just some kind of vague sense of presence and maybe early mid 1900s. But yeah, I was just like, this is so good. And you can see directors like Robert Eggers on The Lighthouse and Ari Aster in Hereditary and Midsommar. Yeah, I think that you can see the influences that Kubrick's left, I mean, for many, many years. So yes, undoubtedly, The Shining is one of the most memorable, most atmospheric, most transcendent pieces of media of all time. The performances like Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, even young Danny, all are amazing. And Kubrick behind the camera, and who was on the 2 seconds? Why is Shining? Okay, so and who do we have? Wendy Carlos and Rachel Elkind on the music. It's all phenomenal. Now, let's talk about this in proximity to his other work real quick. Now, The Shining was his third to last movie, Kubrick's third to last movie. I've seen Full Metal Jacket a long time ago, but let's just kind of go back, rewind of his last few movies. Eyes Wide Shut in '99, his very last movie, Kubrick's last movie, for $65 million. I know it was very much talked about. I don't know the critical reception on it. I think most people find it in decently high regard. I know that it almost drove Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman crazy. Full Metal Jacket in '87, almost 12 years before, or over 10 years, sorry. For $30 million, Full Metal Jacket. I remember that movie traumatizing me as a young boy, or a young man. I know we were probably like 12 or 13. It was all the guys were, hanging out playing video games, and then we just sat up and watched a movie for the night, and we ended up watching Full Metal Jacket, and I was like, God dang, this is insane. And I just remember that really leaving an impression on me. I need to go back and really look at it for more cinematic marital value. But The Shining, the third to last movie that he produced for $19 million, and 7 years before Full Metal Jacket, he really did take some time in between his movies. It seemed that Stanley Kubrick didn't like to go into project to project in his later years, as opposed to his earlier years. He had a movie coming out almost every 2 years. So, yeah, The Shining, absolutely transcendent. The only problem in my personal opinion, may not be universal for everybody, and I think that Stephen King actually was pointing some of this out as well. I'm not exactly sure if this was what his problem was with the movie. Stephen King notoriously does not agree with how The Shining was adapted by Stanley Kubrick. So my main problem would be the fact that we never see this family as a consolidated unit. We never really see them working together and being happy as a family. So we're kind of thrown into this world almost immediately from the first shot, the first helicopter shot. It's amazing to see. However, if we're starting the story out with them driving directly into, I think it was Colorado or something like that, and they're not really showing anything that happens before, we're not exactly sure, if this family was ever really, a happy family. It's very well possible that, given what we learned throughout the movie, that something terrible happened and they haven't been on the same page ever since. Let me write that down. Okay, so let me see anything else we want to talk about. Yeah, that's my main issue with this. It feels slightly abrupt to see the main character kind of lose his mind, and it mostly seems like, has he always been losing his mind, or has he been on the verge of losing his mind, or what's kind of going on here? So that's my main essential issue, and I'm also reviewing this movie mostly because Doctor Sleep is coming out this week, and we've already reviewed it, and we've released the review for Doctor Sleep as well. I want to say that it's probably going to be top 10 of the year, in my opinion, on my list at least, but it definitely is an interesting sequel to this, which I think I have stated enough that, young Danny, the child actor's name is, what is his name? Danny Lloyd, was amazing. I can't believe this kid did not continue to go on to act, or his folks just decided to put him in this traumatizing ass movie with Stanley Kubrick directing and Jack Nicholson going crazy. So I can't believe that Danny Lloyd did not continue to go act after this amazing movie that he's in. I mean, he's an amazing young actor. He is able to put on so many different performances. He's kind of has this like possessed voiced, and he does this little finger movement that I'm pretty sure is advertised. That was his idea, to do the little finger when he's kind of acting like another persona. It's amazing to see what this kid can do. So let's talk in spoilers real quick about The Shining. I mean, if you know anything about The Shining, it's this, the transcendence of this man going into madness, and the majority of the movie is revolving around dealing with abuse and I would say isolation and loneliness, as well as, I guess, being overworked in a way. I want to say that probably Stephen King and his and Stanley Kubrick probably see parts of themselves as this writer in some parts. So as Jack Nicholson's character in some ways, but also they see themselves possibly as Danny in some ways. So along with, like I said, the camera work, like the tracking shots of Danny going down the halls. How did they even do that in the 70s? I feel like the cameras were probably the size of cars back then, and I don't even know how they got it down the halls and got it to that degree. So let's jump into spoilers right now. So at the very end of The Shining, we're in the spoiler section, we see a photo of Jack Nicholson in a 1920... Is it a 1928 photograph of him at a party that looks like the party that he's been attending the entire time? It's kind of the mind bender that you would expect Kubrick to pull on you, but I'm assuming this is what happens at the end of the... Actually, no, it does not happen at the end of the movie, and at the end of the book, because I believe at the end of the book, the hotel is burnt down, or it's in flames of some sort. So there is a slight difference in the movie and in the way the book ends. But okay, so he is in a photograph of the Overlook Hotel, July 4th Ball, 1921. And so it's kind of hard to tell if he is been ingrained into the hotel, like the hotel has like absorbed his soul, or if he's always been part of the hotel. So there's kind of this mind bender that you don't know what exactly is going on. Is Is Jack Nicholson a ghost? Is Jack Torrance a ghost? So there's very much that question going on. There are small details with like the I think there's like moon landing references going on throughout the entire movie. 237 is a moon reference. The Danny is wearing a shirt that is a moon reference. Holy fuck. I don't know why IMDb shows some of the most iconic imagery on The Shining on their page, and one of it is Jack frozen. It's like, fucking spoiler alert, jeez. Like, come on now. 2 hours and 26 minutes seems pretty appropriate for this movie, to be honest. I probably could have watched a little bit more, but it just would have felt a little bit, just strung out. Let's talk about the small details in the background of the Overlook Hotel. There's no way I'm going to be able to cover it all. I'm mostly because I'm exhausted right now. But there's just so many small little minute details, references, and things that you'll catch rewatching it over and over. One of the things is the caretaker, played by Philip Stone, who plays Grady, the racist ass Grady, who spills that shit on Jack Torrance and takes him to the bathroom and starts talking about, Scatman Crothers' characters. Hallorann is coming to, save, the kids, and you need to do something about it, and they need to be corrected. And it's like, wait, hold on a second. What is Grady the father who quote unquote corrected his twin daughters, who we see standing in the middle of the hallway of the Overlook at some point? Did he take an axe to his twin daughters and his wife and correct them and quote unquote correct them? I was just like, this dude is creepy as buck. Like, this is some next level creepery, especially with what's going on with the bathroom. It looks like they're standing in the middle of hell, and that's where they're really corrupting Jack Torrance's integrity, I guess, because it's not too much later that they really get crazy. But I completely forgot about the part where Jack is just kind of slowly going into madness. So let's kind of go along the little stuff about the what's it called? Jack's craziness, how he's kind of going descent into madness. And so the small little details that you see that Kubrick puts in there, or who, I guess the team, the production design, whoever. I don't want to just credit Kubrick because I know that he's probably the main guy, but there's probably so many other people that were on the production that chose some of this. But anyways, showing Jack's descent into madness just is really fucking creepy, and I can't say too much more about it than, the looks that he gives, those eyebrows, those eyes, him just staring outside while his family is just, going, flaunting around and whatnot. And then you see him saying, I'll never hurt you, to his son with his, while he's sitting on his, lap. And it's just extremely unsettling in these scenes. Also, the lady in the bathtub, she, like I said, I think that's probably an allusion towards abuse or sexual abuse, or possibly infidelity. Could be one or the other. The thing is, it's like a rotting old lady, so I'm not really sure what that would have to do with infidelity, but it possibly could be a ghost trying to influence him. No idea. Anyways, what else do we have to cover? That's basically his descent. I forgot that he got bopped over the head by Shelley, by his wife, and taken into the pantry where I'm pretty sure, yeah, the pantry. And that's where Grady eventually talks to him and says, you need to go fulfill your destiny and go correct your family, quote unquote, go kill him. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so, yeah, I completely forgot that he is let out by that point. And a lot of the parts of when the folks, a lot of the parts of with Jack and what is his wife's name? Wendy, sorry. Jack and Wendy, when they're fighting, I think that Danny is edited in, and he's having these like flashes, and he's kind of like foaming at the mouth and shit like that. And it might be, him psychically witnessing his parents fighting, but also physically witnessing his parents fighting as well. I don't know. There's so many different readings you can have of this movie. It's kind of insane. But yeah, it definitely makes me want to go back and look at it. It ages fairly well for, the movie that it is. He's definitely not treating his family, right. He's trying to fucking murder them. The thing is, does it depict it in a way that makes sense? And I think it still kind of does, in a way that makes it feel like the Overlook is kind of infiltrating this man's psyche. So, yeah, if you like this review of The Shining, I'm going to drop another Stanley Kubrick movie that we have already reviewed. It's not coming out until April. We wanted to do an anniversary of 2001: A Space Odyssey, but since you're listening to The Shining review, I figured you might want a sneak peek of it. So check out the link below. You'll be able to listen to the 2001: A Space Odyssey review. Check out all the other reviews we have coming down the pipe. We already have released Jojo Rabbit, The Lighthouse, The Witch, Parasite, Gemini Man, Zombieland, Double Tap, El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. We got them all coming down, as well as Dr. Sleep, 2019, already released. Thank you for listening to the LuckyDog Podcast. Check out all the other podcasts. LuckyDog Podcast. The LuckyDog Podcast on SoundCloud. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch. All the good stuff. All there. PayPal.me/LuckyDog Podcast for all donations. Help us keep the lights on. Help us keep us streaming. Keep the streams flowing. And keep the podcast glowing. Please rate us 5 stars on iTunes to keep us high in the ratings. Thank you. And take it easy.
Have to deal with this matter in the harshest possible way.
I believe that I killed you and Danny.
You did this to him, didn't you?
I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.